Welcome to the November 13, 2024 meeting of the Flathead Reservation Water Management Board. And we'll start with an opening prayer.
Yeah.
Please. Thank you.
Let's pray. Dear Father in heaven, we want to start this meeting today by talking to you and thanking you for the day you've blessed us with. Thank you for each person that's here and for those joining online. We just ask that as we go through our agenda today, that you give us wisdom and discretion and help us serve our community well. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you for that. And to announce, meeting minutes are always on the Flathead Reservation Water Management Board.gov website for anybody in the audience, nobody physically, anybody online. And for the record, attendance, please. Here.
Robert Knoll. Here. George McLeod. Here. Ken Pitt.
Here.
George Cleese.
Here.
And absent today is Shane Lennox.
Thank you. Any potential, as always, any potential conflicts of interest on this agenda? Georgia?
No.
Ken?
No.
Roger?
No.
George? No. And none here. Thank you. Meeting minutes from 10:30, 24, and thank you for taking care of that absence. Any questions, concerns, on the agenda? Otherwise, we'll motion to approve when you're ready.
Yes, I'd make one thing, one amendment.
Roger.
One modification. 3.3.3 board action on that budget update on the IRS. If there was no action, but really if we tabled it pending further, information. So maybe we can modify that.
Suggestion to add table pending further information rather than no action. Any concerns, questions?
No.
Good, thank you.
Otherwise, I guess I'd make a motion to accept the minutes as revised.
Motion by Roger,
I'll
second it.
second by George. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Moving with today's agenda. So let's ready? Make a motion to approve that. Any comments, questions, Roger?
Two things. The 5.1, we just got that information last night. I haven't had a chance to review it. So,
Hold or take it off the agenda?
yeah, or put it on the bottom down there if we get to it, So,
Okay.
but yeah, I have 5.1.
So which do you prefer?
Well, another item was that we have an executive session. So Ken likes to get out of here by 5, so we probably have to go till 4 o'clock.
Okay.
And so we may not have time for that 5.1. So yeah, maybe we should just carry it over to the next meeting.
Okay. Any Comments, concerns? Yesterday, we end the public meeting by 4.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll shoot for that.
I don't know what time it gets back anymore.
5:01.
But you can hunt for an extra hour, right?
Any other comments, questions, changes to the agenda?
So the agenda is modified.
Motion by Roger,
Second.
second by Ken, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right.
With comments for items not on the agenda, nobody in the audience, here. Anybody online?
Just staff members on.
Okay. Hearing none, moving on. Okay, budget update, fiscal.
Afternoon.
Rhoda.
How are you guys? So I've got a little bit of a packet to kind of wade through and some stuff, so if it's all right, I'll go ahead and jump right in.
Okay.
So I'll start with just like a general update. So we had some issues linking up Glacier Bank credit cards with QuickBooks Online. And so it is my understanding that this is also a common problem with community banks. And so thankfully with Redtail and their expertise, they were able to work through that problem. And so we had to download the Excel data, convert it to CSV document, and then upload it into QBO. And so there's little things that are happening all the time with QuickBooks, and we're trying to work through it as they come up.
Is that a one-time deal or is that gonna have to happen all the time?
Yeah, it's gonna have to continue monthly for reconciliation. So I did talk to Glacier Bank and their online team, and they do recognize it as a problem, and they do not have a solution at this point. And so, with further discussion with Redtail, I did go ahead and get a debit card so we can move a lot of these recurring transactions to the debit card to try to reduce the amount of transactions we're actually weeding through on a monthly basis for reconciliation. So hopefully that'll kind of clean it up, but we had 3 months to do all at once to get that in, and they're currently working on classifying them right now. So hopefully we'll have the credit card portion of the reconciliation done shortly. Redtail is also going to be in the office tomorrow, so we're going to try to get that to happen a little bit more often, just so we can kind of keep things rolling along. The next update that I have for you guys with QBO is we processed rent payment along with board compensation last week. And during that process, we quickly hit a threshold, an unknown threshold. So only processed 3 payments and the rest of the payments were just hanging out. So this week, we did call, I called and talked to them and was on the phone, and they said, well, it's a threshold. And I asked them what that threshold was, and they couldn't answer me. They said that the threshold will go up the more often we make transactions and because we're a new user.
Can you back up to what we're talking about? You lost me right at the start.
Board compensation and rent payments and direct deposit in QuickBooks.
Okay.
And so we were only able to get 3 of like 8 payments processed before they shut us down, and they said QuickBooks. So some threshold that we hit, and we called and put a ticket in, and they said, well, we don't really know what that threshold amount is, but because you're a new account, you have to continually use it, and then they'll process more often, and then the threshold limit will go up. And so.
So by threshold, does that mean they only allow a certain amount of funds to be dispersed?
Yes.
Okay,
And,
so,
and they couldn't tell me what that monetary amount was.
okay,
And they couldn't tell me if they could could not tell me that they can increase it. It's kind of like an AI generated thing. So the more we use it, the more that threshold will increase. But I put a ticket in to try to get it solved and I absolutely couldn't. So I believe Ken was the only lucky one in the first go around last week for board compensation, and everybody else is getting processed today.
Good job, buddy.
So,
That's right.
Yeah.
so in your,
So do you want any other information on that, or do you want to be notified when we get these? So we know what's not being processed? Just a question, it's just a thought that, I don't know what that means to notify us, but maybe an email saying, you know, threshold met, didn't process these yet. I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be a good idea to send out an email, let people know what's going on.
okay,
Cause I asked you, cause I was curious myself. But so. You did that yesterday, so then will you just every day after start putting in more and more so that that threshold keeps going up and up?
yeah,
So we're
So-
training the robot.
we are.
Got it.
Yeah, basically that's kind of how it was explained. It's an AI generated thing. They couldn't say what the thresholds are, and it's going to increase with our use because we're just a new company on QuickBooks Online. Unfortunately, they can't seem to override it. So we were able to get 3 transactions done last week and we got 4 done today. So hopefully with more approval of board compensation, we'll get everybody caught up and we'll just keep clicking along and not have those issues.
Did they tell us if it was a daily threshold, weekly, monthly?
They didn't, because it doesn't seem to be a daily threshold. It seems to be more like a weekly threshold. So everything else is processing through today. So I would expect that everybody will have their funds no later than business day tomorrow.
Any other questions on that? Thank you.
Yeah. So we did hear back from Shelley. She resubmitted the information to USLI with Haley's letter. And she did get back to us and said that we do not have a market for us to get D&O insurance. She was not able to get them to accept the letter from legal. So at this point, we don't have any other avenues to pursue with D&O insurance.
Yeah, remind us exactly what we're talking about.
Insurance that covers director and officers.
Okay,
So it doesn't affect our general liability or our nonprofit rider on the general liability, just the additional insurance that we were seeking.
and you said we wrote a letter, so Haley, you wrote a letter, is that?
Yes.
Yeah, I drafted a letter, for Shelley to take to whoever she was seeking policies from, to explain the government instrumentality, and how the board operates. My understanding of the reasons why we are declined is because there are concerns from policy insurers that, new EPA regs are gonna come out dealing with water districts and authorities. In my letter, I assured them that we are not a water district or an irrigation district for purposes under that policy, particularly looking at particulates within water, and the concern of pollutants in those regulations, which we don't regulate water quality. So I'm not quite sure where the connection is coming from, but that seems to be the hook for them.
Mhm. And she doesn't seem to be able to convince them to go past it, even with Haley's letter, so.
So this was just with Bishop Insurance. Did you try other carriers?
So everybody else uses USLI too. And so the answer is from USLI, the primary carrier for D&O insurance is that they will not. And we didn't find any other markets that even do D&O insurance. So that limited us to stick with Shelley. And if she can't, then we're not sure where else to go.
So I have may I ask a question?
Yeah,
Haley, does that what kind of liability does that expose us to, if any?
I mean, so directors and officers insurance is essentially going to protect anyone who falls under that category outside of the immunity from suit clause that's already within the compact. So any sort of board member, supervisor, so like the designee, the water engineer, staff members, that are actually defined within the compact and the ordinance have immunity from suit already tied into the compact
Okay.
for actions that are done within their capacity as an employee or a board member, for this entity. Now, directors and officers insurance kind of covers the other stuff. So what you might be doing, maybe not necessarily per se within your capacity as a board member, but still within it, but just not directly connected to it. So it's kind of like outlier insurance.
Okay, thank you.
But in terms of liability for the funding agreement, we don't have any concern with it. Directors and officers insurance would be an additive insurance. It is not required of us under the funding agreement.
Okay, good to know.
Well, to follow up on that, so how do we, how does the board member, how do we manage that personally? And how do we tell them that it's? I guess the other side of that point is, do we need this insurance? If we do, then my question is going to go to a different direction.
I mean, do you need it? No. Is it recommended? Would I recommend it? Yes.
So given what we've tried and have helped and all of these avenues, is there any, maybe it's completely not an option, but will the tribe and or state help us out with that? Can you cover that with us?
After talking with Rhonda about this right before the meeting, I have two things, right? So one, this decline or denial of the policy is temporary, it seems like. It seems to be a pause in just the current administration, not necessarily a forever decline of a policy for the board. So there's one piece, but my second thing I was thinking of was contacting, some, individuals who deal more in this realm, with directors and officers insurance, and just chatting with them about the other potential avenues of seeking that for a government entity like the board.
Such as?
Hmm?
Such as,
Such as what?
you said contacting other people who deal with this, such as?
I have partners in my firm who work specifically in directors and officers insurance. I would like to speak with them. So that's my avenue.
Okay, and then the idea of going to the tribe and the state is,
It's an idea. I don't know if we could be technically considered an insured under their policy.
right,
So,
but at some point, even if it's not necessarily required for the compact,
mhm.
other insurance is, maybe we should at least put on notice that this is what we tried and it's not, you know, we're not able to get it at this point.
Yeah, that can certainly be an option.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to at least keep them updated. So I don't necessarily know how we communicate, updates to them, regarding the funding agreement, and our kind of monthly responsibilities with the funding agreement. But I would suggest that maybe at our next kind of update, we could put that in, to just at least let the state and the tribes know.
Any other questions on that?
Would there be an opportunity for board members to just apply for their own professional liability insurance and they could get a policy in easier, short order so that it's not tied directly to the organization, perhaps seek a stipend.
That's, yeah, I mean, that's a cumbersome way of doing it. It wouldn't necessarily cover like certain potential liability. Again, like there are things that could occur that are not necessarily directly tied to your authority as a board member or a staff member. But that would be covered under that in your capacity. So it's tricky with that type of insurance. I wouldn't feel as comfortable, but it is an option for sure.
Questions? Thank you.
And the last update I have is we started working with the time tracking app Workforce. And then it's available either by smartphone or desktop, and it provides access to benefits, including your paycheck. And that'll lead us up to the next topic of 3.2, which is a discussion Ethan has on the agenda.
Thank you, Rhonda. Mr. Chairman, board members, we've used the online QuickBooks, pay entry and approval process once, and it's a little lackluster in terms of like providing, this more formalized submission and approval phase that we had before with timesheets, where when you submit your timesheet itself even has on there, it's a declaration that this is the correct to your best knowledge of what you've done, and then there's a chain of kind of title of that, and that either goes back directly for corrections to the employee or gets moved forward on to payroll as an approved step. And those are things that I have historically recorded in that, if there's some down the road issue of error or omission, we have very diligent tracking of those timesheet submissions and approvals. So, I'm kind of trying to figure out where that fits into this new online process, which is really, to me, it seems like people just enter things and then I go in and pick a period and then approve it. And there's no notice or anything that comes to me. There's no active submission from the employee for that time. It's pretty different than what I'm accustomed to. And so I wanted to bring it up here to you to let you know that, it makes me a little uncomfortable not having some sort of a record that's like that. Additionally, each of the time types that are in there, I think we're working with Ryan and see if we can, further develop the categories of time worked so that we can handle all of the standard categories of time that are in the personnel policies, such as administrative time, and how to handle something like we have PTO in there. It's just listed as vacation. For us, it's a combination of vacation and sick leave, trying to kind of tease out some of those nuances so that we can keep our records consistent would be also an advantage. And so I just wanted to give you a heads up that this is a shift. I'm trying to figure out a good approach. If you have some direction with this new piece of information for me, I'd be happy to hear that. But the lack of a formal submission and approval recorded action is pretty different than what I'm used to.
And this is through what software?
QuickBooks Online.
This is still through QuickBooks.
Yes, sir.
Right.
So by using QuickBooks Online and using their time processing, does that would you have to go back and enter that data off of the spreadsheet? And so it saves quite a bit as far as payroll goes.
It does, yes.
Um,
And it tracks changes too. So it tracks who would unapprove it, who approves it, when changes are modified. It does track that within the system, so it does have that benefit. But it doesn't have a lot of the detail that Ethan is looking for, because it is lacking that. It's a very basic program. It's very straightforward. But in that program, you can also put in for paid time off and get approval that way. And so it has some benefits, but it also has a little bit of detail drawbacks.
can you build more detail into it?
Unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you on that. We can attempt to put a ticket in. We can attempt to work with QuickBooks. I think they're quite overwhelmed because it seems like you spend a lot of time on hold trying to talk to somebody.
If you will, also, I will offer that it has been an advantage in the past to have two people working at each timesheet. In that I would get a timesheet submitted and it would meet most of the things that I was looking at, and I'd push that over to Marie, who would then, during her entry into QuickBooks desktop version, catch something I might have missed. So that was, and that was how it was working for the state for years. It was also that way working through the Forest Service for me, and that we always had double two people looking at those timesheets, payroll and supervisor.
So greater detail is in the process you were using before.
Yes, sir.
And what do you use to actually enter data into QuickBooks for this?
So I can go in and Tina can go in and manually enter everybody's time
Right, where do you get that information that you're entering?
off of Ethan's timesheet up until this last payday, which is now happening in the system. And so Ethan went in and approved it on this last pay period. And then it just generates it right over to payroll and we're off and going. So I think that Ethan's suggestion is to continue with the paper timesheets or the digital timesheets and do the time tracking as we work through this, just to keep both going. And then we'll try to maybe create a ticket and maybe solve some of these issues. I'm not sure if we will get them solved, but we'll try. But
Yeah,
it does take a step away from us, which is nice.
well. Maybe I'm going backwards, but I thought, maybe if, it sounds like it's turned digital,
Mhm.
but somebody enters it somewhere. The first entry where somebody's entering information comes from where?
So everybody is responsible for entering their time into the system. You can either clock in and clock out and the system tracks it for you, or you can go in and enter in your time for each day, and the employee is responsible for doing that. Then Ethan would come in and approve the time, and then it automatically kicks over to the payroll portion of it. And so without Ethan without the employee entering it and Ethan doing the approval, then payroll sits and enters in each day for every employee. And so it saves quite a bit of time with employees doing their own time and Ethan approving it.
Is there, given that is, I'm just reaching here, is any reason an employee can't do a paper trail? And then provide whatever is needed for QuickBooks so that you've actually got both?
Well, the digital paper trail that we had before, I think, was sufficient in that we have an email submission and then, approval from that point on. And then each one of those emails has been retained by the organization for long-term tracking of submissions and approvals. But yeah,
Maybe it's, maybe with an email or that, maybe it's,
just a digital file cabinet instead of
but employees can do that still. I mean, there's no reason not to.
that's what I'm hoping to do for right now till we look and get more familiar with QuickBooks, is that we're gonna probably do some duplication and kind of work our way through it.
We started off the time tracking app, and then you jump to this. So what does the time tracking app have to do with this?
The same thing.
It's, that's,
Yeah, it's called a workforce app through QuickBooks Online, and it tracks employees' time either by clock in, clock out, or manual entry for that day. And it generates the timesheet for the employee.
questions?
No.
That moves us into the discussion of the budget. And that in your guys' folder, it should be the third page in. Yeah, the first page in yellow says current rates for November, excuse me. This one shows the current wages as they are for this month, and the one behind it is projected for December with increase in wages for promotions, etc.
The discussion. Questions?
And to add one more thing for you guys to look at, there is a third page in here that is Ethan's suggested proposed edits. And it's a pink and white page.
So Ethan, maybe you could, enlighten us as to what your modifications are.
Certainly, Mr. Vice Chairman, I've tried to put in the staffing that would be needed to, I think, achieve the workload and office arrangement that the board was after. I added. Stop that. I added some recurring expenses down under the general administrative, to include some increased postage that I think is coming, computer equipment, some professional development in HR by that, PMD consulting we was used before, Dr. Sullivan. And, I upped the travel a little bit for the training for staff. I also have at the bottom left, 3 reserve funds that I think the board should pursue and hold as funds retained for litigation, liability and excess leave if they're needed, because this organization does not have the buffer of a larger government associated with it. So, retaining what I believe to be reasonable and modest amounts for those common occurrences in water rights operations and staffing, I think would be a good idea.
From an overall funding perspective, how do we think about and address the idea of this deficit? Is it a true deficit? How do we tell? Given that this is the budget, the other thing is, where do we stand in terms of funding right now?
And that's a concern, to get that started. And I can't answer that because I haven't been here with the prior funding agreement on how we go about approaching them. And I don't know if we can ask for additional funds or. I don't.
That's probably going to happen at least until
Well, I think the real question is, do we still need is the full reconciliation? And I think last meeting you told us that would be coming at the end of November.
Mhm.
So then we'll know where we're at, if we truly have a deficit. But right now, there's the hydrogeologist position is vacant, so there's a $162,000 savings there that's not in effect. And, it's really good as far as vacancy savings goes.
There are other vacancy savings in that, this contemplates 2 additional water resource specialists, and then converting, and one of the current water resource specialists is operating on a part-time than this envisions. I'm sorry, which one? Oh, sorry. I was still talking about the pink one or the yellow one?
Well, either, I guess the white one has, yellow headers has people's names filled in. So
Right.
they know who they are, but I don't see that on the pink one, so is there, looks like there were 3 water resource specialists on the white one, and there's 4 on the pink one. Actually,
4.5.
4, yeah. Okay, so I guess what I'm saying is the pink one is a desired budget that, like Clayton said, is probably not gonna happen right now. That's over what our base funding rate is.
Yes.
So we gotta operate within our base funding. So the white one, then I go back to, because then we can at least see that without that hydrogeologist, we're not in a deficit mode now. So I don't, I guess the pink one is, it's probably too late for the biennium, isn't it?
Yeah, all funding, in terms of an executive budget, needs to be submitted early fall. Yeah, and I know the NRC did not, add anything to the line item to the board this year for the legislative session.
Add meeting increase or?
Yes.
Yeah. So the funding agreement will get us funding going into this next year when?
Whenever they start, executing the funding after the session. Which last session, it took a lot longer than it usually has. What was the number?
I have a question. Oh, go ahead.
I had a really dumb question. Why do we have 2 different white sheets?
So the one is currently at rates for November, and the one is due to promotion plans, title changes and such, the increase in wages, and it's pretty well solid for December.
So which one are we looking at?
So that's up to you guys. I think the discussion is these 2 right here.
I think if we're operating today, we're looking at the one that has a deficit of 5,000. At the first of the year, then that deficit
No,
is
okay.
70,000. So that's
Okay,
just, just to show the increase in salary adjustments.
Okay.
The other thing that's not on here, though, correct me if I'm wrong, is interest bearing on the accounts, right? That's actually generating a little additional money.
There's a lot of money.
There's a lot of money
Yeah,
there. Okay.
I was trying to just I understood you guys as a budget team put
Oh,
this
yeah.
together, so my input was really limited to trying to stick in your format,
Sure.
as best I could.
Okay.
But, that is a significant income, and I do believe that, Ron is working, that would be information that would come out at the reconciliation phase, understandably, and she and I spent a fair amount of time yesterday trying to figure out, some other sources of, information for, I think we probably, cracked a few, windows in finding some of the older records that predated, my hire and others to try to help that out, because, in addition to the smartly thought of, interest-bearing accounts, and also I don't think we have, application. Is there anything on here that's application fees?
No.
Which is a significant, aspect as well. That, would normally, it's hard to predict it, which is why it's nice to have some funds already planned for where you could put it if you had it. But those are two real revenue streams besides the main appropriation.
My
Or
question
there
really,
Would be potentially the third one if, there was fines, but
Okay.
that's not something that, I don't think we're looking at that as a significant revenue stream. But I'm just trying to give you the complete package of all money that I know of that could get into this organization.
well, my question wasn't a fair one. I get that, because these are the expenses, and I'm now asking about the
Actuals.
revenue side.
Yeah,
But I like this addition here, Ethan. I think that's wise. We will need funds in the future to pay for litigation. And so I was just trying to get an idea, in addition to our deficit, if that interest bearing account or those other sources of revenue would be enough to offset the deficit and this. Just trying to think about the next time we have to go to the state and do an ask. These are premature questions. I need to wait till you get the whole thing, don't I?
It's not necessarily premature though, I mean, because funding for legislative sessions needs to happen early,
Okay.
so it's not premature, it's a
Okay.
good thought.
and those are gonna be on your profit and loss statements as soon as we can get them to you guys.
Okay.
So you'll have them to review.
It's a process.
It is.
No, this is super helpful.
There are sometimes late adds to executive budgets, and, they don't ever happen if you don't ask. For the state, I don't know as much about
Yeah,
the
we're-
tribes appropriations.
We're, I mean, kind of heading in a direction that. So from a budget standpoint. Should be no deficit if the funding is available within our accounts. We should be able to say, here's our budget, let's fund it. That's kind of where we're trying to think is, but we won't be able to tell exactly what additional funding we can put to it and what will be remaining in our accounts until we've done that, right? Okay.
Right.
Yeah, because so I understand what this is on this paper on one hand, on the other hand, I think we can, what I'm thinking is we can resolve that, is at this point, regardless of the, that we haven't completed the reconciliation, do we have the numbers for our accounts?
Yes, right.
That's,
That's up yesterday. We do have, board compensation coming out today.
so the other question is, so we've gone to a calendar year
No,
budget,
we went to calendar year, then we
Right.
went back to an
fiscal, okay. So we're in next year.
Yes.
Um, So at this point, the question is, will be, once a reconciliation is done, can we adjust the budget and be safe until our new funding comes in? I think that's what makes sense to me, was that,
I guess my question would be is when can we expect this money to come in?
that was, you know, I mean, if it's after the session ends in what? February?
Right, I did last year, either late April or May, depending on if they
So we
take.
won't be looking at until probably June or July.
Because it did go in September last year, 9-something of last year is when it was actually funded. And if it's going to be that long, then we might need to just not do any increases and just hold tight until we get through this.
Yeah,
We're, Kayla is online.
yeah, I think that's, James just mentioned that, so, Ayla, I understand you're there, I understand you have some helpful input.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hear you, thank you.
All right, yeah, so Kayla Hoyt, I'm the Compact Implementation Program Manager with DNRC. I can answer some of the questions that came about kind of when the next funding agreement can be negotiated and funds transferred. So in July of this year, CSKT and DNRC started to negotiate a new funding agreement. The first step in that process was getting those monthly financial reports from the board. And so when that would, I mean, besides being a requirement of the current funding agreement, those would also help the state and the tribe understand the need of the board. And so those really are the next steps in the process. And as soon as we can get those monthly reports, understand the need, then we're prepared to negotiate that next funding agreement. And these, for the state, these are funds that the legislature authorized in the last legislative session, so it's not dependent on the upcoming legislative session.
Does that mean based on our expenses that are recorded in the monthly financial reports, that could or would affect the amounts that we get?
It could, I mean, if the board is not using the money that it has, and has a fair amount in reserve, then, it would be hard for us to make the case that like the full amount that the legislature allocated, should be transferred to the board. So, you know, the legislature authorized up to 570,000 from the state towards the board, for what was this current fiscal year that started in July and goes for a whole year. But if the board doesn't need that much, then we would need to reconsider kind of how much we transferred. And so with the last financial information that we got, it looked like there was quite a bit in reserves. So that was one of the questions we wanted to get answered before we went any further.
And that 570 is matched by the tribe?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Ethan,
when we last talked to the state and the tribes about this, it was easy for us to produce the monthly reports. That was a stock report that had been coming out of, the accountants at the time. And that was easy. The hard thing to produce was the actuals, because one of the other requirements of the funding agreement was to provide a more accurate accounting of the surplus. And that is where we made some discoveries about some of the accounting and how the accounting had been organized that made it pretty difficult to overcome to achieve what everybody wanted to see, right? What this board wanted to see, what the tribes and state want to see, that's, set forth in the funding agreement, the kind of projections that you'd expect. And so I just wanted to share with you, the monthly reports would be a more manageable lift. The stuff that Rhonda is working on in terms of providing a more actual number is still, in my understanding of things, a necessary step towards resolution of that next phase.
so, Kayla, thank you, but I'm trying to, maybe I'm just being dense today, but make sure that we're, as a board, clear, and this is for us as well. is what was in my mind is just the timing. So we've got our budget on a operating on a fiscal year, but our funding is coming in at a totally different time frame. So how will the state and tribe view whether or not there is adequate reserves or excess reserves, given that timing? I mean,
I am not, oh, sorry.
we're looking at this and thinking, you know, if we're not gonna get new funding until July, we're already looking at possibly bumping up against zero. So it's difficult for me to even imagine that we'll have an excess.
So I just want to clarify, the state had authority to transfer funds in accordance with a funding agreement in July of 2024. I didn't mean to imply that it would be next July. So that's the July that already happened. But the holdup is that we need to get the monthly financial reports and understand what the board's need is for funding. Because the last information we had showed some pretty large reserves.
So that was, I'm trying to get my head around the timing on this too.
Yeah.
And basically, we've been in operation. How many? So has there just been one transfer so far from the state and the tribes to the board?
There's been 2, but maybe 3. There's one in 22.
There was 3.
Yeah.
And and it even designates in the, you know, in the funding agreement, the 62,000 or so dollars that was carryover from the first funding cycle. And
Well, while I'm gonna jump in, so maybe this is. I'm gonna suggest that we really then look at this budget that's in pink, because I think we need to be able to, whether it's an operating budget or not, at this point, we need to be able to present a projected budget that says, this is what we want, this is what we need moving forward. And I think that would help in terms of whether or not we have excess. And I would really encourage the tribe and the state to consider that whatever the limit is that was allowed in the last funding agreement and through the negotiations, that we get that full funding. I think that will help, because I think we've got a lot more to do. I guess that's where.
So where I'm trying to get to though is both the state and the tribes still each have 570,000 that they can transfer to the board, but you're waiting the monthly
Reconciliation.
and the reconciliation report. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
That's
so
correct.
then what I would like to see though also is a summary of when the amounts and the dates on when those 3 previous transfers occurred, so that then we know what we're building off of. So we can go forward to see where we're at. But so I guess my question though is that money's earmarked, but then in the next biennium, that same amounts are in your budget and probably in the tribal council's budget for the next 2 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's currently at the same amount in the DNRC budget that the governor's office is considering now, and I believe he will release his budget next week or the week after.
Okay.
Yeah, DNRC did not request additional funds for the next biennium.
No, and you had no basis to do that, so makes sense. But. Okay, so I think we're getting close on some of this stuff.
Just also, if I might, when we start estimating the surplus, the reason that we had originally shifted to a calendar year was that we would still be spending. We wouldn't have shifted fiscal years yet, and we would still be spending off. It will, by having that additional lag time on the spending cycle, we'll end up with less of a surplus.
You would have 3 more months to spend it on.
Right, I'm sorry to say it, and that did also accomplish, a generous lag time between when they're ready to give the money and when they actually give the money to manage, which are 2 things that worded one previously.
Okay, so for the next game, can you guys give us a summary? But I think another thing we're looking at here, this is a budget. We're also waiting on a balance sheet and a profit and loss statements, and that's going to be telling us really what we have for surplus.
Yeah, and I can't guarantee that I'm gonna have 2023 actuals done and 2022 actuals, and that's gonna be part of that surplus money that we're talking about. But I will try to do my best to account for that all.
So, what do you anticipate we will see by the next week?
We're pushing really hard to do the 2024 actuals for you guys for this last funding session. And to at least be able to provide that to all the funding parties. Or both funding parties and to the board for consideration. It might take some time because Ethan was saying a little bit earlier, we're trying to figure out some stuff that happened in 2022 before he was even here. And so it might take a little longer to put that together.
Okay, thank you. Kayla, did you have anything else?
Nope. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kayla. Any other good discussion? So any other questions? Comments at this point? I mean, with these though, what do you want to do with these? I mean, at this point? What are you expecting us to do?
This is just for your discussion. I think that I'm hearing loud and clear that the board for the first time wants to see actuals. So we're gonna push really hard to get there.
And I think we need to consider from a budgetary standpoint, looking at, something that includes everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with George. It was good to add these other things
Yeah.
in. What is a liability fund on?
If somebody slips, trips and falls and there's a liability issue that needs to be handled that's not otherwise covered, if there's nothing, then it gets eaten right out of operations and the regular budget. There'd be no safety fund. And keep in mind, as a government organization, normally you would have many other agencies with many other accounts and buffers and opportunities to shift things around. At present, we don't have an established line for any of that to occur here.
We're it.
Okay, so I'm not trying to be overly squirrely about putting some money aside, but I mean it's a smart.
But also too, Ethan had these discussions with me before, so these are things that I also think are good ideas.
Is would it help regardless of, or in addition to the reconciliation and the actuals, would it help or state and try to see this budget? I mean, that's where I think, you know, the statement of our need is what I think they need in terms of agreeing whether or not we're going to have, you know, they want to fund the full 570. Is there any reason not to provide? I mean, if we can, let's just say we agree that this is one in pink is the budget. We want to say, maybe we're not done yet, but if we can agree that this is it, should we not be providing this to them as well? At the time we submit our actuals to them, we should have decided that. So think about that. Is there anything else we need to add? And I really want to lean on the staff and James' staff to look at this and say, what else should we have in here that's not in here? It should be a complete budget for that purpose.
And I guess I too would like to, before something goes back to the contacting party, I would like to review it because with negotiations happening, we need to have a little bit of just intentional representation with that, so.
Yeah. Well, you've got this, and I think this is a good.
This is where we're finding the dollars to get to, where we know, what our needs are, and what their actions.
Yeah.
Reconcile.
Yeah. Okay. No, I'm thinking in terms of, so I don't know if this is a good spot to jump off to a couple of questions I have about where we're at with this building and where we're at with getting ourselves in a position to have discussions with our potential contractors. For new building design. We started that, we just haven't got very far. So, I don't know, is there a spot in your report that we can include those discussions?
Of course, we have a lease extension. You can,
Just didn't.
include that as,
Alright.
I have some generalized categories under the Office of the Water Engineer, so we can happily talk about that.
Okay.
So that's quite a ways down.
Or we can talk about it sooner.
Maybe we should
Yeah.
section 3 and then we could jump to section 6.
Yeah, let's finish 3 and then talk about what we want to do. Georgia.
Well, I was just thinking in terms of adding something to an office report from you, Ethan. When we're looking at obligating these funds, I would be interested in knowing if there's been any update on flying the position for the new water quality specialist, which would be another
Water Resources Specialist.
water resource specialist. Thank you. Another defaulting to old programming.
That's why they won't give you insurance.
That's right. That's it right there. It'd be good to know if we've got that also able to obligate or on the near horizon. So
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I thought, it's on my list already.
oh, perfect.
I'll give you an update about where I'm at.
I'm just reading your mind.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything else on the budget stuff?
No.
Right now? No. Anything else?
Not in the budget, but
Okay.
we've got more.
Thank you.
Thank you for that discussion. In your packet, I'm sorry, I've been kind of watching you guys shuffle through your folders and, everybody looks like they might have a little bit different place. There is a, brief email from QuickBooks, and I do have, updates on that. So last week on the 5th,
We all got that. That was that.
That's fine.
In there, it's just.
Unfortunately, I don't think I did a good job rearranging everybody's packets, so.
I think it's after those spreadsheets. It's the one right after the board compensation spreadsheets. If ours is the same setup.
Go ahead.
Okay.
So, on the fifth, they sent us a notification that, they were requiring a 501 determination letter. And if we didn't comply with the 501 determination letter, they were going to potentially close our account down. So that took us down a long, lengthy week. Redtail has spent days on hold and talking to different people within the organization, and she made it all the way up to the executive level where the gentleman told her in no uncertain terms that she needs to have a determination letter.
Question?
Go ahead.
When you say by November, what was the date?
12/5.
12/5. Is that we requested, or is that when IRS
That's
responds?
when they were gonna shut us down if we don't give them the 501,
Is it for our letter or IRS response?
the IRS letter.
Well, good luck
Stating
with
that
that.
we, yeah, exactly. And so that could be anywhere from 6 months to a year. So we did what we kind of thought was, well, let's just submit the letter on the basement level. Let's not worry about the execs. And so we took Haley's letter, the summary that I have also put together that's in there, and the informational letter that we got 2 weeks ago, and we submitted that. We thought, you know, what can it hurt? So they closed our case. So we're hoping this stands. So they sent us and said it's been resolved, and this happened yesterday. So we're crossing our fingers that nobody in the upper level is gonna take another look at this. But I also have it in your packet here to discuss whether we want to actually pursue just getting this out of the way, because it could potentially take up to 10, 11 months if we ever go into this again. But Haley and her letter was extremely helpful, and also the research that I've done, I was able to come up with a summary of kind of outlined here what I found out. So Ethan and Haley are 100% correct when they say government instrumentalities do not have to do federal filings. What we do come up against is we're one of those unique things that nobody really knows what to do with us. We're not a fire department, we're not a school. And so it's hard because we operate kind of like a nonprofit, but we're not a nonprofit. And so we're tax exempt, but we're not a 501(c)(3). And so it's at the board's discretion if we want to just kind of get this out of the way. It's a $600 application fee, and we would need to have Haley's assistance in doing the application. Or we can do whatever the board decides.
So when will you find out whether senior level management's getting involved or something like that?
We're hoping we never find out. Because they've closed it, so we're hoping that that's a done deal. But honestly, we don't know if they'll do a review and this will crop back up. We don't know.
This is for QuickBooks on.
Yeah.
To be able to use QuickBooks.
Okay.
But at the last board meeting, we had discussions about this, and like Haley and Ethan mentioned, that especially Haley's or BKVH's letter provided the basis for all of this. But I guess my gut tells me we should go ahead and spend $600 to get formal tax exempt status from the IRS. It's a small price to pay. Have that as part of our record.
I mean, what would the cost be if they shut down QuickBooks on us? Yeah.
It was going to take your budget and put us back 6 months.
Yeah.
Because we were going to have to navigate back onto desktop, unfortunately, with payroll, and it would stop all the reconciling because we are going through and everything's been imported in, so we can't necessarily extract it and put it onto desktop again because it's no longer supported.
Right.
So we would just have to be in like this weird lurch waiting for some sort of result to happen. And the IRS doesn't move quickly. So who knows how long that would take?
What is exactly a 501 determination?
So they have a panel of professionals that deal with the revenue and the IRS portion of it. And maybe Haley can summarize this a little bit better than I can, but they determine your status.
Yeah, so it's a really, cumbersome process. I've outlined it for Rhonda, through the IRS regulations. Essentially, you submit a request for a determination letter to the IRS. They determine that you are a 501 whatever category, which is tax exempt. That's all it is. But there's about 10 different requirements that you have to put in your request. All of them with like 9 subparts. So it is a cumbersome process. It's not that we couldn't do it, it would just take time.
And I don't want to go waste too much time on this, but how did we get what's called the government instrumentality designation? Where does that come from?
Yeah, so it comes from the IRS actually, from reviewing their regulations. That is what best fits the function of the board. That was through review from both John and myself.
And I think to follow up on that, we did that so that we could get the .gov URL and not, and whatnot, and be designated a government entity. So this is a little, well, it's probably the formal step, I would say, then to get to that status.
Yes, but the categorization of the government instrumentality comes from the IRS regulations. So it's not, we didn't pull it out from anywhere except for there.
And since it's, well, I personally don't know enough about this to whether to agree or object to whether or not we should file for a 501 status. But I'm not sure. Still doesn't make sense to me. What do you guys want to do?
I agree with Roger.
I do too. I think we need to get this done, save money in the long run.
Yeah, we seem to keep running into issues on this, so if we have this in our back pocket, then something comes up in the future, banking or anything else, we've got it.
Do the government entities have to do that, like the private and the state?
I mean, they're such large organizations that the IRS knows exactly what their functions are. When you start getting into these nuanced entities like this,
Yeah.
it gets really tricky and convoluted.
And so, I'm gonna ask it this way then, so applying for a 501 designation, would that cause IRS then to not consider us a government instrumentality?
No, they would. It would be their stamp that we are certainly a government
That
instrumentality.
would strengthen that? No,
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Do we need action on that? Can we take action on that? Is it on the agenda?
It's on the agenda.
So if we're ready to take action, I guess any public comments or you have something?
I lost my train of thought.
Are you ready for public comment on that? All right, any public comment on the board applying for a 501 designation from the IRS? I don't see any public here, any public online? I know public online. Okay. No public here, no public online. We tried public comment, no public comment, so If you're ready, we'll take a motion to,
I think it's more we're applying, asking them to confirm that we're government instrumentality. We're not really applying to be.
It's a determination,
Yeah.
is the better term.
Yeah.
Determination letter, I think is the specific.
It is.
get your motion,
Yes,
make a motion.
I move we ask the IRS to determine that we are a government entity.
I'll second.
No,
Motion by Ken, second by Georgia, that doesn't say anything about the 501.
You could just read it the way it is on the agenda. I think I did this. That's right. That's the language you got from.
that's kind of what I said.
Yeah, it's final and determination letters, but we're applying for with a $600 fee. So if you, however you guys want to word that.
That's kind of what I said.
Motion by Ken, second by Georgia, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, none opposed, approved.
And before you guys jump to 6, I just have a quick review of your board compensation for you under board business. You should have 2 green spreadsheets, and those are committee compensations. One's for October and one's for September for your review.
Want them approved individually? Or
Yes,
want to
please.
approve them all at once? Okay.
Individually, please.
So starting with the September 2024. Any comments or questions or concerns on that? Or is it approved?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Roger, second by Ken. Approve the September 2024 board compensation committees, expenses. All in favor, say aye.
Quick public comment.
There's no public comment. There are no public. So for the record, there's no public to take public comment. Thank you for the recommendation. Did we approve that? Motion to approve? Yeah, any opposed? None. Okay. So same for the October 2024 board compensation committees. Roger.
So George and I modified ours at the start of the meeting to include some travel with a trip over to the water law conference with Rhonda. So there's a slight $300 adjustment for both of us.
You wanna provide us with that or tell us what that is so we can.
So Nobles would be $1841.62 with a $300 addition for travel. And McLeod's will be $1159.75. Does anybody want to check my math? Does it look good?
Okay. What do you need? Here, for the record, there is no public to comment. Taking public comment. No public to comment, so when you're ready, we'll take a motion to do that.
I'll move to approve the October board compensation for committees subject to the increase for George McLeod and Roger Noble.
Motion by Ken, by George. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. And then we've got the regular one.
Yep, the regular meetings for October.
I'll make the motion to approve October 24 board conference.
For the record, no public to comment. Motion by Roger,
I'll second.
second by Ken. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none.
Thank you.
All right. Good. That takes care of item number 3. So there was a suggestion that we go to a different item. You want to? So the record that brings us up through 4.1. 4.1.4. Okay, so we need to discuss adding, want to continue with 4, finish that off. 4.1.5, discussion of adding Sapphire consulting for HR and training purposes. So who has that? I know a couple of you spent some time on that. So,
Sure.
Roger and Georgia, thank you.
Yeah, so Roger, you chime in, you think you have a better memory for some of the details, certain. But Haley, Roger and I participated in a Zoom meeting with a gentleman from Sapphire, and he gave us kind of an overview of the services that they could offer to board staff. And we also asked for this handout, which was emailed to Roger and has been printed off for you to take a look at. So my understanding is that Sapphire primarily offers this EAP, this Employee Assistance Program, to groups that they work with via contract. And the range of services you can see outlined. So one of those is counseling. If people feel that they need some additional mental health support, that's one of the things that they can do. The gentleman we spoke to, and I've already forgotten his name. I keep wanting to call it something else. Anyway, Mr. Parsons also indicated that they have a person on staff with Sapphire who's based out of Ronan that could also come and interact with staff here in the office. They'd be local to do a variety type of trainings and workshops if we wanted to pursue them for that kind of support as well. So that could be everything from basic mediation, conflict resolution, even up to developing a kind of a vision statement for office staff. So they offer kind of a full suite of support to staff. Anything you want to add to that, Roger, that I left out?
No, I think, well, yeah, I guess I'll just touch it. So yeah, there's kind of 2 things going on. One is there is a local person that would come into the office and sit down with everybody and develop a mission statement, goals and objectives, and kind of do team building thing, I guess is what it would be. Haley, you find this on free to chime in also. So that would be an internal thing. And then the other thing that Mr. Parsons brought up is that, as George mentioned, they have a mental health program thing. And I think this, and these, I mean, we got 2 brochures. What I would recommend is everybody take a look at these. I would also like to just get the staff copies so that they can look at them and see if there's an interest in this sort of thing. It's somebody that you can pick up the phone and talk to if you've got concerns about something. I think the class was like $149 a month, as I recall.
I think it was 150.
150.
And I wanna say that was for
employee.
employee that uses the service.
Yeah.
So yeah, the EAP would be a board funded benefit essentially, for employees to access. Yeah, again, mental health, but that could range from workplace stress, disagreement, personal mental health, stress, anything. It could be remote, so you could call in and telehealth, or there is, our local option, where you could go see somebody in Ronan or Fulton, and talk to them, if you prefer to leave the building and go do it, or not have to do it in your car, if you don't want to telehealth. So yeah, it is a board funded benefit. And then the consultant is, essentially like a contracted staff for Sapphire, who could come in.
So this was really more informational purposes and at this time to see what the reception of it would be. And if the staff have an interest in this, I think before the meeting started, George, you mentioned you're familiar with a little bit, yes, thing. Yeah, you married council. Oh, maybe, so maybe you could shed a little more, did you like it or did you? I'm not trying to get into your personal life.
No, it was very helpful. And it was easy to get permission to do it. I can't remember, Eddie was after some forms for that. I can't remember filling out any form. Just, all of them, the service that I wanted to use, the Sapphire has a list of services.
Yeah.
And I picked that one and let them know, and I went to it for four sessions.
We're talking about two different things with that, but we'll circle back to that.
Well, one thing I could add, the college also offers, I don't think it's with Sapphire, maybe it is, but they offer this as well, and I've used it. You know, our students at the college have a lot of trauma. And when you teach them, you absorb some of that. Or, you know, there's just different things that can come up, and these are stressful days, and we really, I'm just trying to make eye contact with everybody. We value all of you, and we recognize you guys have a hard job. And we want to make sure we're giving you the best support we possibly can. So, and this has just come from, we're older and have worked in environments that we know. I've personally gotten counseling through work and have really benefited from it. So, just something for you guys to consider. We just want to make sure you're getting taken care of. So,
I had a question. When you say 150 per employee per month, is that employees that are part of the organization or employees that actually use the service?
Use the service.
Okay,
Yeah, so it's a use-based fee.
okay.
And that's what our support is. You're allowed.
So there's not a limit on visits, at least from what John explained. It would just be like the fee kind of each time.
And so it's not 150 every month, just in case they want to use it.
Yeah.
Are we sure about that? I'd have to double check. I don't know that it was that, the number sounds a little different to me, but I'm familiar with it, and I think what it does is it provides a benefit. And employees then have access to counseling services, and they generally consider what they provide as a mental health benefit. So the counseling services they provide are available to all employees once. But under that contract, I think there is a firm service. Yeah, so let's double check that.
The way that he explained it, there was not, but it would be something that we would probably want to negotiate in a contract if we were to get
Okay.
this benefit.
So I guess really how we're at on this is kind of two-pronged thing. I think either we should meet with your staff and talk to them and see, give them this information. See if they have an interest in this program, and also see if there's an interest to have this local person come in and do some team building, exercises and whatnot, and work with the staff to develop mission statement and goals and objectives and whatnot, so.
Did you guys get it? I mean, John's easy to talk to, you can call him up and talk to him. So that's an option for you as well.
Really nice guy.
So maybe next meeting you could get back to us with your thoughts on it,
Sure.
on both those. So, the person is locally here, and she can come in pretty short notice, is what we were told.
Other discussion? Okay. No action on Sapphire at this point.
No, what, then no action or table?
Table.
Okay.
You want to jump to 6?
Yeah.
You guys good with that? Okay. Can we?
Yeah.
Good talk. Right, let's take a quick break. We'll jump into item number 6. All right, taking a break. Break. Hey, we are back. Break. We're going to jump over item number 5 on our agenda from now and go to item number 6. And again, our goal here is to be done by 4. We can get home. Thank you. So we can get out and go do our executive session. So, Ethan, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, board members, this is my update from under the Office of the Water Engineer, item 6. Under item 6.1, we have office updates. The office updates I have are primarily ones of personnel. I have got the documents together for the Water Resources Specialist position, the first one of 2 potential, and was planning on getting that flown either this week or next week. Christy's been out. She'll be the one helping me get that flown. So hopefully she'll be back in the office next week and we'll get that out into the papers and for solicitation. The second item I have on personnel issue is that when we last met, the board got to take a look at a Hydro 1 to Hydro 2 promotion plan potential. And it was requested that I go back with that and modify the work schedule from a Monday through Thursday, 8:30 to 5:30 core hour arrangement to a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 arrangement. And so I did go back and make that modification and discussed the promotion plan with James Frakes. And he was disinterested in pursuing the promotion plan. not wanting to, formalize that type of schedule change. James is here today. He has, told me that he's fine discussing this matter with you, if you'd like to talk to him personally.
Okay. Hi, James. Hi. What's going on?
As Ethan said, I mean, I spent 9 hours in the car to get here. And I like my schedule the way it is. To me, my time is more important than the raise that was presented or discussed.
What part of it is your main concern?
The 5-day-a-week schedule without understanding if the board has an opinion on remote or telework. It's too much commuting for me to be able to come up here 5 days a week. For it would be my maximum. I really do like the 4-10s or the flex schedule that I use, which is generally 4 9s, and then I make up 4 hours on Fridays. That works for me. I like that. And I like that enough that I wouldn't want to accept the motion that was presented.
So maybe I'm missing something here. If you got the promotion, that would change. I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just kind of confused.
That's what I heard. If the promotion plan, they wanted to change the position description to include 5-day work schedule.
Okay, I understand now.
Well, and that gets to broad. Thank you. Let me continue this. That gets to part of our discussion we need to have about office hours. And whether or not you want the office open on Friday.
Right. So I think you weren't here last
Correct,
meeting,
I was
so
not
I'm gonna
Yeah,
chime in on what I recall. I think we did put the 5-day work week on your thing description, but I think what we also asked Ethan to do was to give us a schedule of how the office could be staffed 5 days a week with a rotating employees. And so there would be some flexibility in there. So I think the onus goes back to you for developing some sort of schedule to keep the office open.
Mr. Vice Chair, I did tell you, we do not have sufficient staff at this present time to do that. Can't do it. We just cannot maintain it. I did give you a budget today that has a staffing increase that would allow us to do something like that, but under our present situation, we struggle to, meet our current needs.
Well, you got 6 staff members now here.
That is not,
Seems like 3 could work on a Monday and 3 could work on a Friday or something, so that it would still be potentially 4-day work weeks or 4.5-day work weeks or something like that.
so 2 of the 6 that you're counting, one works 16 hours and it's irregular. There's not full days, and that's the interim position. The other one is, got some attendance issues, so going into what sounds great it's not viable. It's not, out of just sheer experience in trying to run the office right now, that is not a solution.
And if it means anything, I completely agree with Ethan's assessment of that. It's just not viable with the current staff.
Can I jump in? So my recollection of the conversation was that the board had decided to start putting it on any future position descriptions or job descriptions, moving forward from that last meeting, because it was in preparation for when there was staffing. It's not necessarily that it's required of staff currently to be working on Fridays full time. It's that that's the future that the board would like to see for the public. That can't be done right now, which Ethan did express last meeting. One, staffing, and two, safety, was the other piece of it. And the board thought those were valuable views. But once there are, two more water resource specialists, which are the positions that the board did authorize Ethan to advertise for, there was the intention of having Fridays open.
Thanks for your reflection.
Yeah, and I think another part of that too is also the recognition that the floodgates are gonna open pretty soon.
Yeah,
And the workload is gonna go up, and that also spoke to why we needed the additional staff. So there's that.
But I just don't think James should be put in a position
no,
where he has to turn down a promotion because we're short of staff. Just doesn't seem right to me.
And we did approve that promotion.
yeah,
Yeah. But no, that promotion was not approved.
It wasn't.
It was expressly sent back to me.
well, you were gonna rewrite some of it, remember?
One thing,
No,
just the work schedule.
no, I
No.
had requested that the two like types of requirements that you're looking for in the promotion plan be fleshed out better.
Okay.
Well, and it wasn't just the work schedule. What I recall is you had some language in there regarding James serving as a backup when you weren't available. And that you were gonna add additional language to that. Isn't that right?
That's what I was just talking
Yeah,
about.
okay.
It was more so parsing it out so that
Yeah.
so that James was clear on, okay, what's the administrative promotional items you're looking for, and what are my hydrologist promotional items that you're looking
Yeah,
for? Cause it wasn't clear.
we're talking the same thing.
Yes, yeah. But there was no, from my understanding, when the board looked at it, there was never the intention of applying a required Friday workday 4 days. With the promotion,
Not a requirement.
no,
No, okay.
But the potential to build in some flexibility into the future.
correct,
For the office.
correct.
And it's difficult, I get that. I know that when, way back when, it probably was spurred on largely because of the pandemic. People working at home. But even prior to that, the tribe had gone to a 4-day work week. And I think they're still there, right?
Yeah.
And except for a few offices where the offices are open on Friday, but what they did is they worked it so that employees still got their 4-day work week, but schedules were adjusted so that certain people worked on a Monday and certain people worked on a Friday. So 4-day work week is either Monday through Thursday or Tuesday through Friday. But you gotta have enough staff to do that. I get that. But, is that what you guys want?
Well, I think, I guess I just have a few more questions. I get what you're saying, and I do understand safety's an issue, and I respect that. We have to see the workload that's coming, and I think we're just trying to come up with a plan to how do we best address the needs of the public. So it's very helpful to hear back from staff. We know we have some locally, some that commute. So Ethan, can you explain to us why you can't be here 5 days a week?
Sure, I do that same commute. So I'm already driving around 9.5, excuse me, around 9.5 hours when I'm here during 4 days. The round trip that is unpaid, has never been paid, just so everybody's clear. I never got any hourly pay for that drive time. So when I work 40 hours, right? When I add in my commute, which I believe, you said Well, that's your problem. You signed on for that and I did to a certain degree. You know, I signed on for what I thought would probably, you know, be 4, hopefully less eventually. But we did not have office hours when I got hired. And as things have progressed, you know, it's turned out that I have to be here more as opposed to less. But picking up that extra day a week of driving is like, I mean, I'm just gonna go bonkers. You know, you guys are talking about like employee health plans. I mean, that's just like, that alone is that's the health issue, is just driving too much, working too much. And when you've got dedicated folks who are willing to do the work, are smart enough to get the work done, it is tough to have them also drive an extra, you know, 2.25, 2.5 hours just to keep Friday open.
Could I ask where we are driving from?
Alright, east of Missoula.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about you, James? Okay, and that's 4 hours a day, 9 hours a day,
No. It's,
for the whole week?
a little over an hour here and a little over an hour back.
Okay, I got you.
So, comes out to about 9 hours per week.
And the current schedule that you like, could you explain that again? Exactly.
I have been working on this, what we're calling it a flex schedule. I take about 9 hours, give or take, depending on the workload here. And then I make up the rest. Generally, it's about 4 hours on Friday,
Make it a pop.
remotely.
I couldn't hear where you said you drive from.
Missoula.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I mean, so if there's additional staff, right, like you're advertising for. I mean, and James is kind of starting to step into somewhat more of that designee role too. I mean, could it not be where in the future? Like, one of you is here Monday through Thursday, and the other one's here Tuesday through Friday.
I mean, that is the kind of thing that could be potential. That's not the way that the office hour rework, the rewriting of it looked in the personnel policies last time. The work week is 8 to 5 with a hour lunch or something like that.
The discussion that I remember having is you can work throughout the 5-day week as long as you hit your 40 hours. So that can be determined however your position description describes it as.
I mean, I will look to the other shaft over here. I got the impression that they were intending to have us work 5 days a week.
I was under that impression, yes.
You know, I'm sorry, I mean, we can go back and check the video, but I'm not trying to. you
Well,
know,
I think it's helpful to know what your impressions were, and I'll speak for myself. My desire to get Friday covered was not in any way to seem punitive to anyone. It's anticipation of a workload that's coming and understanding that we have this obligation to the public. It helps to get your feedback, certainly, to know what can we do? How do we get there? And for us to look at this as a team, not us versus you or anything like that. How do we solve the problem? We know we have a big workload. We know what your feelings are about the commute. I get that. So how do we solve it?
We don't think that there's a problem. And that's, I think maybe one of the things we would like to work through is that we talk to all the people. I don't know how many of you have run public offices or had direct experience in running public offices. I have a fair amount of experience in running public offices, and I have talked to most of the folks that come and go out of here. So
I think, first of all, I think every one of us has had some experience with that whole work.
Okay.
I mean, I spent 40 years doing it, so absolutely.
We probably got, what, collectively 200 years of experience around the table.
So don't
I think we
assume-
know a thing or
so-
two about a thing or two.
That's not a good assumption, but anyway, go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying, you know, it's working right now. Everything is, people are coming in, they're getting their water right issues solved. We have not got
Like, if we ever get a grumpy customer, it's not because we weren't open on Friday, it's because the regulations were stricter than they wanted them to be. You know, and we are getting things done in a timely manner. That's the thing that is really blowing people's minds, is how fast we get applications moved through our office. And how quick we can come up with an answer, or let them know that policy needs to get developed still. And like a straight shot answer.
No, I know where I'm at in my head. I want to try to work this through as well. So given the level of staffing that we have, you know, I think that I'm willing to allow that flexibility, and not be too concerned about Friday until we are staffed. But at some point, I think we need to be open on Friday.
And I think,
How we do that, I think we can be flexible with that too, but, so I may be one of them that is given the impression we want people to work 5 days. I mean, that's historically been how I've ever done until officially we went to the 4-day work week, but it's, you know, can we be flexible? Yes. How do we do that, and when do we make that change? If we need to, you know, have a board position on that. Because for me personally, frankly, it's what the board wants. Have to do that in a way that is, we understand, not only sensitive to the needs of the staff, but the public, as you said. Yeah.
and I think it's important to note too, we don't really have a data set on if the public's upset that the office isn't opened on Friday because no one's been here to collect that data. Right? It's kind of an unknown thing at this point.
Those same people come here on another day.
But there might be those who come that never express, because there's gonna be people that will not ever complain to you or to James, but they'll complain in the community. And I think we have to be cognizant of that, and that we have a very unusual role in the community, that not everyone is very supportive in seeing this office succeed. So I want to represent those people right now who will not speak up for themselves. They have a voice in this too. And I think perhaps a fair statement to make at this point would be, once we're staffed up, we can have a rotating shift on a Friday. Then you're gonna be able to assess just how much foot traffic there is. And we could revisit that then with some actual data, some actual numbers. But all I know is I keep getting information indicating in the next year, of course, when Myris comes on, there's this flood that's gonna be coming in. And how do we do that without offering that 5th day? Now, I hear what you're saying. Maybe it's not a problem, and I will be happy to admit that I am completely wrong. I've got a good track record of being wrong on a lot of stuff, and I don't mind being wrong again. But I do want to represent people that may not speak up for themselves. Someone's got to do that, right?
Well, on those lines, I will also tell you that some folks who are either tribal members working for the tribes or work for the tribes would like to maybe be able to work here and have the same schedule as their family and their friends. So, the other day we talked a little bit about, we'd like this to be open on Friday so that tribal members who are working Monday through Thursday would have access to the office. You know, I haven't heard that. I have heard the other part of that, which is that, well, I would rather work somewhere that has the same schedule as my spouse or my family or whatever. And, you know,
But
it's
I
not
don't think it
necessarily the
has-
board's problem to fix, but it is a factor.
It doesn't have to be all or nothing, though. We can rotate that day, right? That's what I keep hearing. We can be flexible with that day, at least until we can ascertain how big of an issue it is or not. And if it turns out not to be a big need, then we revisit it. but right now, we just don't know.
Yeah. And I guess I'd echo George's sentiment that we don't wanna, or Ken's thought that we don't wanna not give you that promotion.
Right.
From a staff. In fact, what you're proposing to do is exactly what should be done. You know, you've got a flex schedule that works. So we want to get a flex schedule on the other end with other people so that this, because when we started this, the office was open Monday through Friday. And then you made a unilateral decision to not be open on Friday. That was not a board decision. And so now we gotta go back and figure out how we're gonna reestablish that. So your situation is exactly what we're looking for, a flex schedule like that to accommodate both ends of the week, you know, so, and maybe there's others that don't, but I mean, that want to be the same thing, but somehow we gotta meld it all together here eventually so that we can get back to that.
So let me ask this question. So when Roger suggested how we would operate, and you said we can't, okay? So how many additional staff do we need to add so that we can say we can?
I would add another water resource specialist to that list. That it's the hard thing for me to predict right now is where the.
Let's stop there. Add
Financial-
another one to this list.
Yeah.
I mean,
What?
so you're talking about on this list, so are all of these staff or vacant?
They're a mix and some of them are only half staffed. You know, the question that I have is how much role the financial director will be in helping to, you know, handle office hours. That part I don't know. If the financial director will be part of that office hour team, then we wouldn't need to add another one. But the Kalispell and the Missoula offices run 8 and they're moving to 9. With their 5-day-a-week services. The other thing that I would tell you is that I would probably use some of those water resource specialists as water commissioners when the time comes, and so that we would be able to cross-train that staff. So that would allow us to have a huge amount of flexibility and ability to actually have a higher level, skill level of water commissioners available for this office, which is something that this office is required.
Okay, let's go back to this. I guess now I'm not clear which of these are staff. And which are not.
You could appoint a staff member as a water commissioner.
No, I'm talking about these positions. Which one of these positions are staff?
So you want
So given,
man, you want a total of 6 water resource specialists.
well, like, yeah, let's get there. So this says water resource specialist. The top one,
There's the ones that are staff.
how many are there?
Three. Well, we can't count Kathy Schubert because she works remotely entirely. We got 1,
You know,
2,
I'm just talking about the specialists. There's 1, 2, 3. Here there's 1, 2, 3, 4,
we got
5.
5 right now.
Except that one of them is totally remote.
Is what?
The 5th one out of that 5 is Kathy Schubert, who's totally
No,
remote. So
that
she's,
would be 6 with Kathy. So
Yeah,
we've got you, James, Sydney, Christie, and Rhonda. Rhonda can be here to answer phone phones on one day a week and when you're short.
Just for discussion's sake, Kathy, Sydney, Christie. And then open and open. In terms of water resource specialists. There's 2 open. On your budget.
Yeah,
In terms of water resource specialists. You just said you'd want to add another one.
well, it depended on the answer about the financial director and what their role was. Cause otherwise, we would really be staffing the office with 1, 2, 3, 7 folks. And I have suggested that we would need 8 people to have the kind of coverage that you're looking for. But we try with 7.
But to get, let's assume this works for the moment.
Mhm.
If that means this works for the moment, that means we've got to fill 2 water resource specialist positions.
Yeah, but we don't also have enough money to do this full layout. This is yes, you're totally right. If currently, if we were to go out and hire 2 water resource specialists now, under our current budget, we won't have enough money to hire a hydrogeologist.
But that's what we specifically agreed to the last meeting.
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
Right, but when we jump to this pink one, where we start talking about future, with more money and what you need to keep the office open. This is more trying to accommodate that schedule.
it seems to me we're talking in circles. We've been all through this.
That was all I was reaching for is what do we need if we fill those, we should be able to then switch to the flex schedule that allows us to stay open, keep the office open Monday through Friday.
Yeah, it would be easier if the financial director could do 2 days a week instead of 1. But yeah. We could do it with this list, the pink list.
And did you say we're getting ready to advertise a water resource specialist now?
Yeah.
Which means one of these.
I thought are we going for 1 or 2?
I'm gonna go for 1 first.
I thought we were going for 2, yeah.
You authorized 2, and I said that'd be great, but I might wanna drag my feet on the second one till we see what the pool was. So I'll go out for 1. I still would have the authority to hire 2 from the hiring pool, but, I don't want to commit to that until I saw who all applied.
Those advertisements still have to go out for that position,
Is
and that's
it,
gonna happen soon.
is it the same position description?
Yeah. Except that I need to figure out what the answer is on the work schedule. So that's
Well, other than that, it's the same position, so we could say ×2 when we advertise.
I may hire more than 1 position from this listing, is I think how it's commonly done.
I think we were pretty clear at the last meeting. We're gonna continue the way that things are right now until we get more people.
Okay, and that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
My question is how many more people do we need just to be able to say we've hit it?
And that was discussed the last meeting. The answer was 2.
Yeah.
So if it's advertised, we're not doing more than 2. We should just say 2. Looking for 2. And then if your pool is weak and there aren't 2, then there aren't 2, but we should have it out there so that we don't have to re-advertise for a second. We should get it out.
Right. Right. I think that either one of those languages does it. Although if you say for sure two, then people have the expectation that you're gonna pick two people from the pool, as opposed to may hire two people under this same.
Well, may hire two people is different than may hire more than one. So may hire two. That's a much. Okay. Thank you. That's what I was.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Sure.
Do we have to do board action to approve James's salary increase? Kind of what I heard.
Let's don't forget James.
Yeah.
We're waiting on the revised PD.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah, I remember that now, sorry.
The discussion was. Brought here. Apparently, just to bring to our attention. James's position. And I think we clarified that. Have we clarified it enough for you?
I believe so, yeah. I'll wait to the next, meeting.
Okay. Okay.
As will we.
Georgia.
Well, I just think that we've had an important moment today. I think when you're working with the public or with staff or colleagues of any kind, it's always important to take a beat and go, this is what I said, what did you hear? Right? Those aren't always the same thing. And so we've had a moment here to go, this is what we said, but we understand now something else was heard. So thank you everyone for your good input. And that helps us. So appreciate that.
Well said.
Good. Good. Okay. Warren?
Yes, sir. I move on to 6.2, which is wireless updates, and I'm coupled in some water right updates with that as well. So you do have a report. It's a report that you've seen before. It just gives you an update of things received at the office, things moved around the office. I know that you're short on time, and so I'm not gonna get into it too much, other than like just sort of serving that up for you right now. The other thing I'll go over is I'd like you to be aware that we've spent a huge amount of time on the wireless permissions issue. It's about 65% of James's time. So it's 26 hours a week. It's about 95% of Schubert's time, which is about 19 hours a week. And it's been about 25% of my time, which is 10 hours a week, which is significant. We have sucked the log into some of those projects as well. Where we're at with things right now is that go live did happen on 10/31. We had a following week hot fix, which means that's like oh my God, this is broken. We need to get it repaired fast in the database. Our office was in fact able to enter its first 60 DF from scratch into the database and produce the appropriate reports from the database. And so you'll remember I gave a briefing that 10/31 go live got reduced substantially from what our original hopes were, down to just being able to enter into the database our domestic allowances, our stock allowances, and that's really the complete kit. We had hoped to also have the state-based registrations as part of that package. Because of the complexities, permissions, that was not able to happen, and we continue to work through that aspect. But on the good side, we expect it here this next week. We'll use the load sheets of the 583 or so, maybe 583 past water rights that this office has worked on. They've all been entered into a very detailed and specified Excel sheet that's called a load sheet. And the DNRC water rights database manager will be able to take all that hard work and just put it right into the database. So all 583 of those will go in, and then we'll be able to get off to the races with issuing water rights that have had Part Bs filed. Is that exciting for you?
Which is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes, no, I know really deeply, I started tearing up, so it was perfect timing apparently.
So, that said, we have unearthed the unfortunate significant issue with the public query system, in which, when we go to look at the water right, the one water right that we put in, for some reason in the database, it prints with the FRWMB Office of the Engineer header. When you go out to the public query system, it puts a DNRC header on it. So we've had an all stop, and that's why I spent more of my morning dealing with that, and James did, and Kathy did, than we would have liked. And so, and that's a common situation. We're trying to get to the bottom of what is going on there. We're at a point where we actually think this full project completion is more like in the May or June range, and so that's where we're at. I'll also tell you that we had to revamp the much worked on way to handle state-based registrations. We had really wanted them to stay online the way that they are with the DNRC header and their pending and suspended status until our office touched each one of them one at a time. And there's several overly detailed reasons on why that apparently doesn't work. And so we're looking for a fix for that. We think we might have found something. At the end of the day, I think what we're gonna do is suppress pending status water right applications from being served out to the public. And that's probably gonna be the solution for it for right now, so that we don't have DNRC water right abstracts with our headers on them in their pending status until we are able to actually provide review. But since we're talking about state-based registrations, we've done a little bit of work. I've done a little bit of work. There's about 2,800 of these out of the pending and out of the suspended. We roughly estimate that'll take about an hour and a half of uninterrupted work to address each one of those state-based registrations, probably 2 hours if you get interrupted. So that's 4,200 to 5,600 person hours to deal with this one part of our larger water right issue. And that doesn't factor in our upcoming endeavor to set WPMPs for state-based registrations, which I'll need you to all embark on with me to help give guidance on a couple of the rub spots that we'll need clarifications about. I said this at the last meeting, but I wanted to remind you that CSKT must file their registrations by 2026/9/17. There'll be at least another 3,000 of those hitting this office also. So this gets to the workload that you were talking about, Georgia. The GIS jurisdictional determination process is still being discussed, and it's not solidified, and I'll give you an update as soon as I have one for sure. Last item, unless you want to.
I don't understand what you just told it. The GIS jurisdictional process is still up in the air. What does that mean?
We had, I gave you a presentation where we showed you a map of the reservation and each one of the points of diversions and places of use that was mapped. And we've been working with the state to identify everything that was within a 1/2 mile boundary to the inside, 1/2 mile boundary to the outside. As these, we're not sure whose jurisdiction these water rights are. Because as a reminder, all of the mapping of those water rights is based on centroids on legal land descriptions, so there's some inaccuracy based on that aspect. So you can't really like look at that dot and say, oh, that's for sure where it is. And so the reason it was an important one is that everything on the interior of that, we had green dots. We're gonna move those right over as like whole control by the board jurisdictionally for those as a go. And then we needed to work out a process on how to winnow down these near the border dots. So that's the GIS jurisdictional determination process.
Yeah, it may even be a ground truthing process too.
I at least, looking through the claim file, I'll tell you, you know,
Yeah.
Roger, it's also in my court too. I'm meeting with the compacting party attorneys to discuss that issue.
Oh, yeah, okay. We're still doing
They're
that.
both tied up for litigation tomorrow and Friday, so. If you guys didn't remember, the water court litigation is occurring tomorrow and Friday. I have an email I'm gonna send out on, particular sections to listen in on if you are curious.
Yeah,
And a Zoom link.
I am curious.
and. Well, let me just ask this, so, in looking at the status of the various categories of registrations and filing and water rights that we have. I keep wanting a visual. Maybe a chart, a simple chart that lists them and sort of gives their status where we're at with each of them.
sure, can you pop up the last page of the, WPMP that shows all of our form types? And, this is, not to totally resolve, but I can show you our quick, what I think might get at what you're talking about, and you can correct me if I missed the mark.
I'm talking about this page.
Yeah, is there any way to make it a little wider? There should be, see how it says active and pending in that one column? Those are all of the form descriptions that we have, that we accept or we need to have policy set up about, and we have a couple of, I think, updates that might need to go into this. Then we get the objection to the water right sorted out, so, sorry to show you a little dated version, but as things move, it's always hard to keep up with our progress on updating everything in all the spots.
Well, just the things you touched on today, for example. Would have been, visual would be helpful, I'm not sure, I mean, if these that you touch on today are buried in here, it'd be useful, but I do have that sort of pointed out exactly where they're at. I was thinking some sort of a flow chart looking, if not flow chart, graphic that says, for each of these, this would, especially when they're being presented. I don't know, that's me. Does anybody else need a visual on this?
I love visuals. So we have two eyes in the front of the head, right? We need that, so.
Anyway, think about
Well, I mean, I have thought about it. I think one of the things we ought to do is consider adding to this pink list, a meeting coordinator and facilitator. Like that's something that we have so many public meetings and it eats into our staff's time immensely. And so, one of the, in terms of like, you're probably, we barely can make the cut on getting you your materials, sorted out in terms of just our total workload. And so, it's up for consideration. I think you should think about it. I had tried to present the bare bones minimum for getting the water right work done, but
that's fine.
a meeting facilitator might not be a bad idea. Sort of like one of those committee legislative type people you see operating, that help move things along.
That's weird.
Well, and Ethan, you and I had chatted about that potential position as well for when the office and the board starts getting into hearings and appeals. That would be a really good position to manage those types of things administratively, that these guys are gonna be way too bogged down preparing for those things to handle.
Well, recognizing that we they're still trying to work through this budget, if that's another position you want us to consider. I say work up a draft. And look at it and have more discussion about it. The other thing I wanted to ask again is, for example, we talked about the state-based registrations and we haven't gotten to the tribal ones yet, so 4,000 hours. At one point, we talked, at least I think I raised the idea of contracting some of this work that we need to get done like this upfront. Does that make any sense to anyone? And should we think of trying to help out?
Yep, no, I appreciate it, and I meant to go try to do a little more diligent work on that, and I just.
Okay, no, that's fine, but so you haven't lost the thought.
No,
So, but how would we do that? How would we, if that makes sense, you know, maybe we start trying to find someone and, you know, get it nailed down and then, you know, when we have to start doing this, they can help out, and then when the tribal stuff comes in, they can help out, and, you know, when any of those big blocks come in, we can help out, you know, with contract base, so we don't have to keep them on staff. Just come in and help out and get us caught up. What would that look like? I mean,
I think, so where I'm at on thinking it through, unlike, you know, where we went with the building deal, which should have been a little bit more like RFQ. This would be a full-on RFP, where we would just set the sideboards, we'd have a known amount of work. Here, pitch, you know, this is what we want, you pitch an actual bid for the work, and then we'll put that out for solicitation and, you know, active bid sort of arrangement. So, where it is actually like, because we'd have more parameters. Now, the hang up here is, I can't even pitch it till we get the database built. I mean, it's gotta be a stepwise, arrangement, and so that's. But I got that noted down here, and we'll keep that contract idea alive.
what else?
I got the office lease stuff to talk to you about.
Okay.
But I don't wanna truncate your discussion on.
Any other
Water
questions on where we're at? No.
No.
Filing so far? Okay, good.
Okay, the first item would be the actual contract lease extension. And James, if you could pull that document up and share it, that'd be great. So I got opportunity to speak with the with building owner. You'll remember we did go over lease extension. This looks significantly different than the one that you gave me marching orders to move forward with. And there's a couple of things. One, the previous lease had been written where it was a 4-year extension. But for years, you know, and then with the first of the 4 being year 4, being that, you know, because we will have been in here. First lease was for 3 years. So when you see under item 3 and it starts out at year 4, you know, that's why it says year 4 there. But the extension itself would be that you had approved moving forward with was a 4-year extension with the option to back out with reasonable notice for years 6 and 7. And the building owner did not want to engage in that at all, and instead said, well, we'll give you, she agreed to year 4 and 5 extensions with the rent modifications, which went up 150 each on what the board had moved forward to before. And then the year 6 is highlighted because the board had not wanted to engage in 3 more years of lease when we last discussed it, and had hoped instead to engage in 2 years of lease with the hope of finding a way to get a building or something in place.
Yeah.
And so what you have here is a much, streamlined, reduced option that really, she said, I'll do your 2-year. Yes. I'll offer you this 3rd year, but not conditionally. Either sign a 3-year extension or a 2-year extension. And I did, that's the end of it. That's what we have ahead of us.
And do you know how many square feet are in the building?
No, sir, I do not have that off the top of my head. Why, you feel a little cramped over there with those cubicles?
No, I was just gonna calculate the lease rate. Usually it's based on square footage.
Doesn't it say in there it's 2,600 square feet?
Oh, yeah,
And the rest of it.
2,600 square feet. Look at you, Georgie. You are
I lived.
quick study over there. I've looked at this a bunch of times. I forgot it's even right there.
Yeah.
So we have a year-to-year lease and we can extend it twice.
No, we have a 3-year lease, was the original lease. It was the only lease, the only.
No, I'm talking about what's up on the board.
No,
Year
this would
year
be,
5, are those extensions, or are we agreeing to all up through year 5?
you could agree to year 4 and 5.
Okay, so that's yes.
Yes, that's a 2-year extension. Or you could also, we can take that highlight off of year 6 and you can agree to a 3-year.
Okay, so it's not a year-to-year lease.
It's not a year-to-year lease.
Okay.
Nope. Does it say that on here somewhere?
No, it's just,
Okay,
wasn't
well,
clear.
It's just putting timeframes in there, expiring a midnight on the 14th, so that they can adjust the rates.
yeah, that language is what you engaged in the first lease. So that, that the way that that's commencing May 15, 20, that's not, something that we just copied and changed the year and the dollar amounts.
So the only advantage I see to having a 3-year lease is that we're setting the price. Now,
So the building has been considered for purchase by some other folks, and that's a, factor. Because if somebody was to buy it, they could kick you out if you're gonna lease it.
So if we went for a 3-year lease, are we locked in then if somebody else buys the building?
Yeah.
If we got a lease, I think, my other question is, if we, after year 5, lucky enough to have a new building, can we get out of this?
Not the way it's written. Well, if you don't sign if we just line out year 6 and you sign the lease extension for years 4 and 5, then you're out.
I mean, if we have a 6.
No, and the language that I wrote last time had that option,
Yeah.
and she said no.
What was that like?
Mr. Briggs, you're gonna have to do a little fishing for the previous version. I didn't dump it into this.
Okay. Cause
Just go back, like maybe through to try that one.
down right there.
Yeah. Sorry. Just keep searching for it while we're talking.
While you're talking this, so I ran the numbers real quick, that's $2,400 per month. On an annual basis, it works out to $11 per square foot, which is exceedingly cheap. In Kalispell, office space is generally going for, low-end office space is going to $14 to $15 a square foot plus triple net. So, this is pretty reasonable for office lease space.
That's good to know, and they certainly next door are paying a lot more. Yeah, thank you for finding this. This, Mr. Chairman, item 4 is that, escape clause. Which would have started, at the end of year 5.
And so she doesn't want that, so. I'm just, thinking out loud here, if we agree to year 4, year 5, and then language that. Says something to the effect that, we have the option to negotiate year 6 if needed.
I'm just gonna say, if needed, come back with an extension that looks like this with year 6. That's her, she's gonna give you the option to try to negotiate. For one, but she's not gonna sign off on something that says you can stay unless you decide not to. She thinks that puts too much, of the power in your hands. Now, if you wanted to consider another alternative, we could go back and we could say, well, we want year 6, but we want the option to sublease. Or something to that effect, so that, it is year 6 itself is a $32,400 risk. Along with, our obligations for insurance. So if you ended up with a year 6 lease. And you had a new building somewhere, okay, that's kind of what I'm just trying to help, Langland believe.
If Roger says it's a really good deal, why don't you just go with year 6?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean,
There's no clause that says you can't sublease.
I just can't see us getting a building in 3 years. I just,
I don't either.
I'd love to think we could, but
At the pace we're going, no. we're
Yeah.
probably not affording that, but I think we need to keep moving. It is suggested that we go through year 6. I see head nods, I see at least a consensus. Do we need action on that?
She did say she'd be happy to do years 4 and 5, and then if you wanted to add a 6 afterwards, like you could think about it for a year.
you had an answer.
I'm just trying to.
Okay. We need board action. Office and board action on lease extension. All right, you ready for public comment?
Yes.
All right. Do we have any public? No public? Any public online?
James?
Yes.
A comment on the second line up there, you're missing a paren after.
That's the old one.
Oh, it's on the new one too.
Where is it?
Second line. After Arnold MD 21012.
Maybe it would be worth asking the staff that work in this room. If they had any thoughts. I mean.
Say it again?
Trying to like build on this team-oriented,
Yeah,
thinking,
just
like,
say it again.
okay, I think maybe it would be worth asking the staff that work in particular in this room, you know, how they felt about it, because this room has no, windows or anything. And so I'm just trying to say, like, I'm trying to, be more inclusive.
That's fine.
You know,
How much do you hate this building?
Well, before you put them into 3 years of, you know,
I do, have some concerns with future staffing, if we're gonna add 2 more people, where are we gonna put them? Can that stage be removed to maybe hang the monitor, the display on the wall, and maybe provide some more space that way? Can we get a window in this room? Is that an option? Do we
Great question.
have the ability to at least put in a window or 2? It's pretty dark in some, in the winter months, even more so. A lot of times I have to ask Sydney, what's the weather like out there?
Did you say winter months darker?
It's even darker here, because eventually you come to work and it's dark and you leave and it's dark. And so it feels even darker in the winter months because you don't see daylight.
Yeah. It's very echoey.
Yeah.
Well, have you looked for any other office space?
Yes. At present, I have not had tremendous success in, and I have actually done that. Like, I know that there's some of these things you guys want me to do. I'm like, I have not had time to. I have actually done that. James has helped to do that. We've not had a lot of success. We could ask her, like, well, what if we wanted to put some windows in this thing? I mean, I think at this point, if you're gonna do a 3-year extension, you know, we might wanna think about, it starts getting more worth it to do some upgrades, like the windows upstairs, so that we're not just wasting electricity and gas heating the place, and try to make, I would say this is actually the priority, to see if, and she's like good with this. If you were to wait another board meeting and give me a chance to ask her about, like, hey, what about painting this place and putting some windows in? You know, like, maybe we can find out if those are options for us.
Want to explore?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, make a little list.
All right, thank you for that flexibility, and then, we can say that, boy, if we could do a few upgrades, 3 years would be no problem.
Yeah, and
Those would be on us, just to, like, after she shelled out for the mold, the heater, the air conditioning, the new water heater, the updated the pump, like, she's not gonna put a window or 2 in, or paint. And we do think this room needs to be painted.
Daylight's nice.
It's got the remnant of the mold in here sometimes.
well,
I just know the Masons wanted it very secretive in here.
Yeah.
So no windows, but it's 2024. We'd like some sun, right?
suggesting.
Are you gonna show us the secret handshake?
Sorry.
Are you suggesting that if we propose to do those, that we also say maybe we could take some of that expense off of that?
I know the answer to that. And I'm suggesting more like we populate this box down here, you know, as like, maybe we have another one-time expense for some building upgrades to, you know, make the hours in this big room in particular a little more habitable. And, see where she's at least feel her out on it.
Well, since you're feeling her out, I know what you think, but really, what if we say year 4, year 5, and then for year 6, the option to negotiate for year 6 sometime during year 5?
Yeah, I want to make sure I get it straight, Mr. Chairman. So
That's just an idea. I don't. But you guys don't wanna do that, that's fine. I mean, I just throw it out there. We should
No,
do
I
that.
like how you look at things from different angles. I hadn't thought of that. So it's important to consider, especially when we're trying to think about,
That way, if we get into the start of, or the first quarter of year 5, and we're looking and we're saying, look, it really is gonna be another year to give anything. We're gonna need another year, but if we get into the first quarter of year 5, it looks like, you know, we're making headway and it should be good. We don't need a year 6. I'm just trying to think about a way to make year 6 flexible.
Maybe we could ask for like a first right of refusal. If she gets an offer to rent out year 6 or 7, and we could say, hey, you know, before you sell or before you, you know, do, rent it out to somebody else, could you give us first right of refusal?
You know, maybe that too, just whatever you guys think can add some flexibility to that year 6. Otherwise, we just go with year 6. And it's,
See what you can accomplish.
Right. Thanks for the.
since you're talking to her,
Yeah.
if she'll talk to us.
Oh, very nice. We had a very pleasant conversation last time.
All right, do you have anything else?
Yeah, you wanted me to talk about the RFP and where we were at with that, or, you know, or
Let's, yeah, let's see where we're at real quick, because it's 4, and I think we're gonna try to,
Yeah, I will be leaving at 5, so.
okay. All right. Got 2 minutes.
Okay, you, formed a committee, and the committee never met, and, that's where we're at.
How many,
I
how
forgot
many
who's
people
on
do we
there.
have?
There's 2 people on the
2,
committee.
okay. No, how many people do we have to look at?
2, also.
Okay,
Right, 2. All right, we have 2 formal, applications that came in.
it would be nice to try to move that forward.
I'll give it those guys a hand. I've dealt with this kind of stuff before.
Okay.
I just got the one though, the low guy, so forward me whatever else you want.
if I have the committee. Can someone remind me if I'm doing
I am
something?
at, announced next meeting December 1, and if I am not mistaken, December 1 is a Sunday.
It is.
Okay. And I'm not available that whole week.
It's checking your dedication, Mr. Chairman.
Good catch.
I didn't say I couldn't meet, I just said it's a Sunday.
I'm out that whole week.
The 4th, then,
And I will be out of the country for the following 3 weeks.
Following, starting when?
On the 11th,
Starting when?
and I will be back on the 27th.
So if we shot for the 10th, I mean, that's tight for you because you're leaving the 10th, work.
Yeah, I suppose.
Works for me.
what about the 4th? too?
Well, I just was trying to include Georgia.
Oh, you're-
Georgia's out.
I'm out the whole week.
I didn't catch that, sorry.
I'm
about
actually
that.
doing something fun.
Oh, good for you, yeah.
So am I.
So pretty excited about that.
Yeah. You're not gonna interfere this time.
What do you mean?
That's good.
10?
Good.
Ah, okay.
December 10th.
We have a date, 10. So I think this was close. I think they just missed a 0, December 10, not 1 0.
I don't know who they was. It probably wasn't me.
Georgia, anything else? Ken?
Nope.
Roger? Howard? Motion to adjourn to the public session of the meeting?
Motion adjourned.
Motion by Ken,
Second.
second by George, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. And George has kindly made his little conference room available for us again to meet. So we can go out there and do that.
Mr. Chair, could I? Something to say.
Absolutely.